Hey, Chris and Bob, quick picks.
That's right. I'll try to keep this one quick today, but it's a
Yeah.
pretty good one. It's kind
No,
of
the
juicy,
last quick pick was like, I don't know how long the last one
but
was. It was
was it
long,
so quick, right? Yeah.
but it was good.
Maybe maybe we need to have our AI and bastard mode tell us whether it's quick or not.
So
That's a
that's
little
true.
inside joke there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll tell them
Hey,
about
but
that later.
yeah, but this one's kind of interesting. So we're going to kind of take some subject matter that we spoke about in the past and kind of show it's kind of an interesting thing because what I say is, historically, because I've been involved in, incidents for a while now, typically the stuff that we see happen to individuals or small companies or whatever is not the same as we see that nation state type stuff, right?
Right.
I mean, usually like people go, hey, is this the North Koreans that are behind this ransomware attack? And like, no, it's not North Koreans, right? So, but in this case, we're starting to see that things that were discovered and used by others, in this case, nation state, our buddies over at North Korea have seemed to adopt
Yeah.
and use very effectively.
Yeah, they seem to be much more current on what the hell's going on. I mean, they're staying a little bit more clued in because what Chris is talking about is that we've done we do these quick picks, you guys know that, and a couple of them, and I don't know whether it's just because you and I have been started doing this, because I feel like, well, part of me says, well, is this stuff just accelerated to the point where I'm seeing it more frequently, or is it because you and I are starting to pay attention, a lot more
Yeah.
because we're doing this, we're kind of watching the rags to kind of watch things, but I don't think it's that. I honestly think that the frequency of this is, the timeline from discovery to commercializing the attack, I continue to shorten,
Yeah,
and that's kind
I
of what
agree.
this tells me, right? Is because the couple articles that we saw. I mean, we're only talking in the last 90 days that you and I have kind of spotted a couple of these things. Now, it started in June when a researcher figured this out as it relates to what we're going to be talking about with the IDEs. But man, it only took 6 months to go from first discovery to, and this is like, well, you'll see when we talk about it, this is a multi-stage attack. This is not like one group taking
Yeah.
responsibility for one thing. This is one group doing one thing, another group doing a different thing, and a third group doing another thing on top of those. So that's what
Right,
I'm
right. No, it's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I do think it is being accelerated. It's hard to attribute that to anything specifically. I mean, we could probably make an assumption that AI might be assisting in that, or just the knowledge that AI is, or people that are using AI to gather knowledge,
Yeah, I
and
agree.
then just putting the pieces together more quickly. I also think maybe that I think it's a little bit of we see the law enforcement shutting down different sites and different things fairly, I don't want to say quickly, but more quickly than in the past.
Right.
So maybe people are knowing, hey, we better strike while the iron's hot, right, and get
Yeah.
this done.
Yeah.
We're going to lose our opportunity to leverage this to get whatever we're after.
Yeah, we talked about that in another one of our series where they're using these weaponized LLMs now. So I mean, if I'm them, I'm having LLMs scour the internet just watching for anything that I might be able to use, right? And pull it down like you're talking about. Even if I just got to warehouse it short term until I can look at really digging into it more, then you got to believe that's happening, right? Because, I'm not that damn smart and I just thought of it. So they've probably been doing it for years.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I think that it's and it's they're just doing it all probably under the guise of research, right?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
not like they're
Yeah.
going in there and going, "Hey, I want to hack blah 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 blah,"
All right.
and take the job applicant process to do it. I mean, they're just putting general research or maybe very specific research stuff in, but LLM just sees it as a research request.
Yeah. Well, I know they're subscribing to all the all the threat feeds on everything. I mean, they're doing all that too. So anyway, so this kind of started back in 25 in June, and this had to do with IDEs. And again, you should go back and check that quick pick out. It's called IDEsaster, is what that one was called. And it basically was exposing the fact that IDEs have a vulnerability about where they'll execute code as part of the configuration process. It's built to automate the processes that developers do. That's what the feature was in there for. This is not some new vulnerability. It's been doing this from the very beginning. It's just now it's getting weaponized. So that's where that kind of started. And then we talked about this Shai-Hulud big NPM, incursion that happened. And I guess that was like October or November, I think, when we did that
Yep,
one. And
sounds
that's where
right.
they got into about 800 compromised. They compromised about 800 packages that are all public domain. that were they're open source software, public domain software in some cases, and they got into those and actually took advantage of them. And then this latest thing that triggered this particular discussion had to do with the fact that the North Koreans, have figured out, okay, well, since the IDEs have been compromised and these open source libraries are out there that allow you to kind of get a back channel going, which is what that whole Shai-Hulud, go read that one as well, because there's some really cool research in there that shows you what can happen. Then they figured, hey, you know what? We're going to do some job postings for programmers. And what we're going to do is we're going to give them a sample development project to evaluate their coding capabilities. And,
Which a lot of people do. Yeah.
100%, right? I mean, that happens
Common.
all
Yeah.
the time. And what comes out of that is as soon as you load the project, then it executes this code and, it does things like prompt inject, because all of these IDEs now have AI agents kind of built into them. So,
That's right.
and they can't tell the difference between legitimate requests and illegitimate requests. And so they just let it rip,
They
right?
execute. That's
That's
right.
what they do. It's exactly
Yeah.
what they do.
No, I mean it's really interesting. I mean it is. I mean it's. Some people could say, man, it's hitting below the belt, and in a way, it is, right? I mean, here you are, you're trying to find a job, and but these types of scams. I mean, I was part of I interviewed a guy last year, and I remember he was saying that he felt now he didn't get a scam like this where he did something that compromised the machine or anything, but they were trying to get after money, right? And they had provided him some money to buy some equipment, and then they wanted him to do some kind of return and do all these different steps. And he kind of smelled it. But I mean, this guy was an IT professional. He'd been around for a while. This guy was no dummy. And I mean, he probably got 20-30% way down before he finally figured out something's not right here. So yeah, so this stuff is like this. I mean, people going after people looking for jobs or whatever, and people trusting these sources is just I hate to say it, but it's easy pickings, especially for somebody like North Korea. It's like 84% attack success rate, I think is what was in there.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about is that's 84% attack success when in these IDE, in this IDE
Yeah,
mechanism. So, and some pretty big players, if I remember correctly, right?
yeah, and I think yeah, I mean it wasn't discretionary, right? It was
That's correct.
across the IDE space,
Yeah.
so it wasn't like one you could pick on one manufacturer. I think you put it right. Like this is a feature
Yes,
that has been weaponized.
that's
So
correct.
yeah, I guess it wouldn't be categorized as a vulnerability
Mm-mm.
by definition, right?
No,
So yeah, and you would I don't even. It's kind of tough to categorize it, right? Because I don't even
no, it's
know.
kind of a new.
Some,
Yeah.
yeah, some people might throw it in the whole supply chain category,
Well,
maybe.
it's
I'm
it's
sure.
it's
Yeah,
infrastructure. I mean,
it
the way
is.
to look at it, as far as I'm concerned, it's infrastructure. It's infrastructure that develops the infrastructure. So, I mean, it really is.
No, yeah. Well, and I was, you're right. It's about infrastructure, and but I was listening to this other podcast, application security podcast, and the co-host on there was talking about it. These are developers. This whole application security podcast about that stuff. So it's pretty interesting, especially when you're not a developer and you start
Hmm.
hearing them talk about all this stuff. But she was talking about infrastructure, and she kind of said it, from a developer's perspective, which I get. She says like it's like furniture. You
Yeah.
get it, you set it in place, and you forget about it. You
Yeah.
might clean around it or whatever, but
Right.
you don't do anything with it after that. And when people, this is a good example of that, is where
Yeah.
somebody says, "Oh, well, there's a piece of that I can take advantage of.
Yeah.
Let's use it." Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it affected everything from GitHub Copilot to Cursor to Amazon Q. I mean, all of them. And by the way, Visual Studio, just to be clear, Visual Studio has this, again, not unusual. It was a
right.
built-in, it was just how we've developed forever. I mean, I'm a developer. We've been using these IDs forever, and it was just an efficiency thing, right? It would run these configurations when you loaded the project. So it wasn't like it was the big deal here is the AI agents and assistants that got added to these environments just allowed a lot quicker and more automated process to do this. I mean, that's what it really comes down to. So that's
Yeah,
what
and
that's
those
about.
AIs were there to make things even more efficient, make you more productive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, no one runs through the potential risk scenarios when that stuff goes on there.
No, right.
I think it's just kind of like, and I think the vendors, I mean, not speaking for all of them, but I think a lot of them just throw it out there, knowing they got to get a product out there. They got to add those features or they're going to be left behind, and then just figure it out as they go.
Well, yeah, you and I are going to wind up talking about Clawbot sometime here shortly because that damn thing, I mean, I got serious opinions about what I'm watching happen on that front, right? But the point being is that somebody comes up with it, just throws it out there, and then a minute later they go, "Hey, you might want to be careful. You might want to be careful with this thing because it looks like it might bite you if you're not careful." So,
Yeah, it's weird. It's almost like firearms training, right? I mean, it's something similar, right? I mean,
ready, fire, aim. Yeah, I'm with you.
yeah, no, it's crazy. Yeah, I just don't think there's enough. I mean, I think it's just it's moving too fast. I mean, I
It is
always
moving
see.
too fast.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we didn't, as IT, I don't think we learned our lessons with Shadow IT.
Nope.
I think the way we attacked it and kind of reactionary, and I thought maybe, hey, if we can just eventually we can just stop, put controls in, and then they'll never happen again. Well, it has happened again. Now it's happening again at a
Right.
scale unheard of.
Yeah.
And yeah, to get your arms around this, and it's amazing. I mean, I had lunch with a former coworker yesterday who works in the financial services space. It's amazing how many people that they've either moved into or hired into AI roles for just different reasons. Obviously, they're building out agents and do those things,
Yeah.
but the security side of it is they're starting to figure out pretty quickly and try to move people in the roles. But the thing is the people that they're moving in these roles are having to learn it. There's not like these guys that
No.
have been in this doing this for 10, 15 years that you go hire. Then those people they might exist, but they're being hired by the big companies for like seven figures. So
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
I mean, the people who know how dangerous it is are not the kind of people they're going to want to have to listen to anyway. In some cases, right? They're
Yeah.
not going to say, "Oh,
No,
well, you really ought to think 5 more minutes before you do that." It's not in the
no,
thing.
it's not a deal.
So
Yeah.
getting back to so Shai-Hulud, which was that worm, right? I mean, the thing that was interesting about it as a part of this, it only took about 72 hours to do everything it did. It affected 800 packages with 132 million monthly downloads, everything from modules for Zapier to Postman to ENS domains, all of those things, bunch of major organizations. And what's really terrifying about it is that thing created 1,000 malicious repositories every 30 minutes. So,
Yeah.
you're working at line speed that's insane, right? So at the peak propagation, all these manual incident response just ain't possible, right? When you've got 1,000
Yeah.
repositories every 30 minutes, you just cannot. Incident response in the form that we think of it just doesn't exist, right? I mean, there's no chance that you can get in front of that.
Yeah, I kind of remember this, a little bit of the analogies like early ransomware days where
Yeah,
the encryption would overwhelm the
yeah,
AV. So
yeah,
AV couldn't keep up. It wasn't that it didn't have the ability to stop. It was just too fast. I mean, I would see where like servers were replicating. So the things were getting encryption here. They were replicating so fast here, and the AV's like, no, I don't have enough resources. I just can't
yeah,
keep up. They just
yeah,
overloaded it.
yeah. Percent.
It's very
Yeah,
similar.
yeah, and I mean these guys so the Shai-Hulud thing. What they did is they weaponized Truffle Hog again, a production piece of software that's used by programmers to check to make sure they don't leave things like keys or tokens laying around in the source code. Once you deliver a binary, you don't want to expose credentials or tokens or anything else. So Truffle Hog's really built to kind of
And then
go do that.
and developers never do that. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean that's why Truffle Hog exists is that people check it when it's well, if you're smart, when you've got a third party vendor giving you software, you would run this on that software. You'd run Truffle Hog to check it from the vendor to make sure that they're not leaving things in open text, but programmers should be running it over their code too. When there are binaries after they do the golden master, they should be running it over the top of that. But that's all they did. They weaponized that again through this process. They weaponized Truffle Hog in these GitHub repositories and they went scraping credentials and just tokens and secrets and everything else that they could get their hands on, right? So that's
yeah,
27,000 private repositories were crawled through over the course of this thing, and so that's all of that data. All of that data was basically accumulated and was exfiltrated. So I mean that's exactly what happened.
yeah, and those creds are it, right? I mean,
Hmm.
I mean secrets. I mean, there's so much damage done with just one secret,
Yeah, 100%.
um, and it happens so quickly. I mean, it's it's crazy the amount of effort that's not required once
Yeah.
a threat actor gets a hold of that
Yeah.
to get done what they need to get done.
Yeah. And the thing about this is it's not a zero-day exploit, just like you were talking about. Not necessarily. It's just a misuse of fundamental functionality, not that functionality was there in error. It's not the same as a vulnerability, right? So it's not a zero deal. It's just a package manager. The way it works, it does it uses scripts, and then they use auto execution to do things. GitHub repositories work the way they've always worked. Everything worked exactly as designed, but the problem was they found a way to exploit that. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. um,
Yep.
which
And
is
they're able to do it at scale quickly.
So what does all that mean? What they did is they basically established a C2 infrastructure inside of all of these modules. That's what they were doing. They weren't doing it for fun or giggles, and they were just putting enough in there to allow them to be able to build a backdoor C2 channel into those modules, so that when those modules got compiled into whatever system uses them, right? I mean, Microsoft uses open source, like we said,
Everybody does,
everybody
yeah.
uses open source. So if you happen to use one of those modules that had a C2, that they'd put that code in the steps, that C2 channel, then at the point of execution, it was going to be able to try and find a way out so that it could beacon, so that they could see it on the outside. And then once they see it on the outside, they would come in. So that's what these North Koreans were doing. They were using the developers and running it through that process. And they were including modules that had the C2 code in it, so that when they ran it, they were basically establishing a C2 foothold inside of the organization. And then they were watching for the beaconing, and then they just went at them. That's more or less what was going on.
Hey, I mean, it's pretty. I mean, it's a pretty neat little package because it's not like they're having to go find their own resources to
Yeah,
create, for C2. They're just saying, hey, people are going to serve it up.
it's quintessential. It's quintessential living off the land. This is this is a quintessential living off the land, right? They're taking advantage of what's already there. And and
Yeah.
and again, how did that happen? Well, these AI assistants, again, that do these auto execution and automation steps, are what really made this be prevalent. But by the way, the configuration thing was already a weakness. We're just saying that the AI assistants help accelerate that. That's all we're saying in this case. So every one of these IDEs, because prompt injection can have an impact on those AI assistants. It doesn't differentiate. It doesn't know how to differentiate. That allows a backdoor into the IDE environment. But when you have somebody else who knows that, in addition to the fact that they're clever enough to give you a bunch of packages that you're going to compile up and create an executable and run it on your network or run it on your workstation, then, I mean, hell, it's kind of a freebie.
Yeah. And how many of these guys are running stuff on their own assets, or maybe they're running it on their work asset or their current job's asset, or,
Right.
yeah, who knows? Grandma's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say that once Microsoft figured this out after that research was done in last June, they created, I think it wound up being around 22 dozen CVEs. They wound up creating a couple of them at a 10.0 level. So once they saw what this was, then they created those CVEs. But you and I, I don't know if you remember, Chris, when we were talking about this before, you can't just revamp IDEs overnight. You can't, development environments, you cannot just change overnight without breaking the entire infrastructure. So the fact of the matter is that we just all have to be pretty aware of this in the short term, while the manufacturers and the people who have these systems try to figure out how to put the right controls in place, so at least the programmers, the people who are running them, are using, know how to deal with that, right?
Yeah. No, no, you're exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, I think they picked a very good
Smart.
target. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's damn clever. We mentioned that before. That's pretty sneaky shit. I mean, that is really pretty sneaky shit, because that's, again, they're using the protocols that are already in place. A lot of this wound up shipping stuff back to GitHub. You know what I mean? They reuse GitHub as a junction point. So, your EDR, your MDR is not going to catch that stuff, right? I mean, it's going to look like normal traffic going back and forth to GitHub. So it's not going to notice that. And, they're clever enough, if they're using these malicious LLMs, they're clever enough the LLMs can basically be prompted to say, hey, don't just force feed all this data out in one run. Do a little bit, wait a few minutes, randomly wait a little bit, do a little bit more, randomly. That's all you got to do, is tell it to do it in that way. And that traffic, you wind up looking at traffic that goes, well, hell, it doesn't really look like someone's taking 4 gigs of data right out of my network, because it's being dribbled out over
Yep.
a period of time, right? Because the LLM's smart enough to know not to put it all out at once. So you don't even have a whole lot of behavioral capability to pick up on that in
Not really.
some
Yeah.
extent.
I mean, it's going to look like everything else that's flowing across there probably. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So that's when you get down. I mean, that's what this is all about. So I think the main thing is, notice that, okay, that this is now being weaponized. You got North Koreans who actually exploited this, so that means everybody in the world is probably exploiting. All the bad guys in the world are. If North Korea's got a hold of it, everybody has. So this is another one of those. You got to be really careful. You got to watch for the CVEs that are coming out, and what the patches are going to be on these IDEs. But you also got to be careful about the modules. If you are a
that's right.
developer and you're using open source modules, you need to be careful about that as well. Be sure to follow the guidance that's being put out. And again, some of this is happening in real time. So I think it's just important you know that.
Yeah. And I don't know how many, historically, how many development shops are paying attention to that stuff, right? They're
No,
probably
right.
leaning on security, or if they even have security at all, is leaning on that. Most of the time, security is worry more about the production stuff and not the development stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Going toward the closing on this. The other thing that is obvious is that tools and anything related to development, or tools in general, you have to take into account what AI is able to do inside of the context of that tool. So that's another thing that has to happen. We can't just keep adding AI functionality without considering the ramifications of what the context is inside of that tool. How, what's capabilities, how far can it extend? And I am not of the opinion that it should be everything's enabled to begin with. I am of the opposite opinion. I know it's more work. Don't enable it, have it disabled to begin with, and the programmers or whoever's using the tool has to go enable it a little at a time as they start to learn and understand what the hell the ramifications are. We're going to have to change our attitude about that, because I don't see how we survive some of these big attacks otherwise. I mean, if everything's enabled to begin with because it's convenient, look at an example like this, right? You and I talked about this. GDP of the UK went down
yeah, well,
0.05%
yeah,
on one
exactly.
damn cyber attack for an entire country. Related or not, whether it was AI or not, it doesn't make any damn difference. The point being is that is the scale we're dealing with when we're talking about these things. So
That's exactly right.
we're just gonna have to get over the fact that it's inconvenient to kind of configure these things to begin with. But and every vendor out there, and I'll go on record saying it, every damn vendor out there should be disabling capabilities until the users are smart enough about what they're enabling before they're able to turn it back on. It means give them the training, make them understand it. Now, if they just want to go through wholesale and turn everything on, that's fine, but they own that at that point.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
individual owns that at that point. There's accountability related to it.
Yeah, not to go down that rabbit hole too much, but yeah,
No,
that's what you hear Windows 11 and Microsoft and all the stuff they're kind of automatically turning on, and with Copilot and all that stuff in the OS, it's scary as hell.
we just have to think differently. I mean, and why do we have to think differently? Because of examples like we're talking about here. How many people have to get hurt? How many companies have to die? Before we realize we just can't do it the old way. So it is what it is. I think that's the message of the day.
That's it. All
All
right.
right. So
Well, our next one might be live together next week.
yeah, we're going to give that a shot. We absolutely are going to try and give that a shot. We're going to be at Ride a Boom. That's, by the way, if you guys don't know about Ride a Boom, you should go look it up real quick and see if you can sign up. It's next week in Las Vegas. So yeah, we're going to try and do one live. That'll be first. We're going to try and do one live from
Going
Ride a Boom.
live,
That'll be a blast.
live from Sin City. We'll see how
Yeah,
it goes.
yeah, that'll be right. That'd be cool. All right,
All right.
everybody. Thanks. We'll see you
Yep.
next time.